Welcome to Fuller Expectations, the podcast where we dive into topics like aging with confidence, navigating identity shifts, building new healthy habits, rediscovering purpose, health and wellness routines in midlife, and yes, maybe even money, retirement, relationships, and letting go of things that no longer serve you. I'm your host, Carrie Fuller, and I am so excited that you're here with me today. My hope is that our episodes feel like a blend of personal growth, real conversation, and gentle encouragement. We'll keep things honest, thoughtful, and practical. If you have not already, please hit follow so that our podcast can appear in your podcast library. We drop episodes every week, and we don't want you to miss it. And if you thought of somebody who might benefit by what you've heard today, please share this episode with them. And now let's get into today's episode. Welcome to Fuller Expectations, where we focus on reinvention, growth, and living fully in the second half of life. In this special series, we're diving into one of the most powerful and overlooked tools we have, communication. Because so much of our stress and tension and frustration doesn't actually come from what happened, it comes from what wasn't said or wasn't heard, or maybe even what wasn't understood. We're talking about having better conversations, not just with others, but with yourself, so you can live fully, more clearly, and have better connection and peace in the back half of your life. Sometimes we avoid difficult conversations, but those are often the conversations that we actually need to have. Is there a conversation that you've been putting off because it feels uncomfortable, emotional, or even risky? Listen up to hear about why avoiding hard conversations actually creates more stress and how approaching them with intention can strengthen your relationships instead of damaging them. So much of the stress in our lives isn't actually about what happened. It's about what was said or maybe even not said that should have been. In this new Fuller Expectations series, The Conversations That Shape Our Lives, we're talking about communication, speaking clearly, listening better, navigating hard conversations, and reducing stress in every relationship. Because clearer conversations lead to calmer lives. I'm excited that we're also attaching a listener reflection worksheet in the show notes, so you can open that up, print it out, and use it as a guide to shape your communication plans as we head into 2026 with positive intentions to make this our best year yet. As we dive into conversations that shape our lives, my promise to you is that you'll have a better understanding of how better communication isn't about talking more. It's about living with less stress, more clarity, and deeper connection with the people that are meaningful in your lives. You'll feel confident in your ability to speak clearly, listen better, navigate hard conversations, all of which will help reduce stress in your relationships with others. Episode 1 we're launching today is about why most stress is a communication problem. So I'm really glad that you're here today because this episode is the beginning of a special series that I believe has the power to reduce stress in your life. And again, to strengthen relationships and honestly, make life feel a little lighter. So let me start with a question. Think about the last time that you felt stressed, frustrated, or overwhelmed. Maybe it was something small. Maybe it was something that was ongoing. Maybe it was with someone that you love. Maybe it was work-related. Or maybe it was something that you keep just replaying in your mind. Now, here's the real question. Was it actually about what happened? Did something happen? Or was it about something that wasn't said or wasn't clarified, or a situation that just wasn't addressed through communication? Because in my experience, or maybe in yours too, most stress isn't really about the situation itself. It's about the conversation that may have never happened. And today, I want to explore that idea with you. We're going to do this gently, honestly, without judgment, because awareness is where real change begins. So let's get started. Stress is rarely about the moment. We often think that stress comes from events, something someone said or something someone didn't do, a misunderstanding or a disappointment. But when we slow down and really look at it, stress isn't born in the moment itself. It's born in the meaning that we attach to it. It's born in assumptions, in expectations, in interpretations, and very often it's actually born in silence. Think about that. Is there an expectation that wasn't fulfilled? Was there an interpretation of a conversation that you walked away with that was maybe a little different than the person that you were chatting with meant for it to be? Did you walk away from a situation in silence and then later wish that you said something? Or did you say something and wish you said it different? You might say, I can't believe they didn't show up for me. Or they should know how I feel. Or you might say, I've been so patient, why don't they get it? But here's the uncomfortable truth. If an expectation is never communicated, it can't be met. I'm going to say that again. If an expectation is never communicated, it cannot be met. And when expectations go unmet, usually unspoken ones, resentment quietly takes root. We all know what this means. So let's talk about how unmet expectations create resentment. Simply put, unmet expectations are one of the biggest sources of resentment in our lives. And what's tricky is that most expectations are actually invisible. We carry them quietly. We assume that they're obvious to other people, but how would they know? And we think to ourselves, if they cared, they would know. But people don't know what we don't tell them. One of the most powerful phrases that I have ever heard is this: unspoken expectations are premeditated resentment. Let that land for a moment. If I expect something from you, but I never actually say it out loud, and then I feel hurt or disappointed or angry when it doesn't happen, that emotional burden didn't come from your failure. It came from my silence. That doesn't mean that our feelings aren't valid. It means that they're informative. Stress, resentment, frustration, these are all signals, not signs that something is wrong with you, but signs that something needs clarity. So ask yourself, who am I holding responsible for something that I never clearly expressed? And what expectation have I assumed instead of communicated? Let's talk about avoidance and why avoidance feels safe, but it actually isn't. Avoidance gets a bad reputation, but it exists for a reason. Avoiding a conversation can feel safe. It can feel easier in the moment. It feels like you're keeping the peace. We tell ourselves things like, it's not worth bringing it up, or I don't want to rock the boat, or I'll just let it go, or mine, I don't want conflict. But avoidance doesn't eliminate the discomfort. It just delays it. What we don't say doesn't disappear. It settles into our bodies. It shows up as tension, as irritability, as distance, and as emotional exhaustion. Avoidance often masquerades as peace, but it's really just quiet stress. True peace doesn't come from swallowing what matters. It comes from addressing it with clarity and care. So here's the hard part. Avoidance feels safer than vulnerability, but long-term stress is far more costly than a moment of discomfort. One of the biggest misunderstandings I see is the idea that silence equals calm. So let's talk about silence versus calm, because they are not the same thing. Silence can feel orderly. It can feel controlled. It can look like everything is fine, but silence holds unspoken emotion underneath it. Calm, on the other hand, comes from clarity, from honesty, from things being put out into the open, even if they're imperfect. You can be silent and deeply unsettled. You can be calm and still have hard conversations. Silence says, I'm holding this in. Calm says, I trust myself enough to address this. If a relationship feels quiet but tense, or if a workplace feels polite but stressful, or if a family dynamic feels fine but it's just heavy, that's often not calm. That's suppressed communication. And suppressed communication finds a way out, usually as stress. Here's a reframe that I want you to think about today, and it's about stress as a signal, not a failure. What if stress isn't a sign that something is wrong with you, but a signal that something needs to be communicated? Instead of asking, why am I so stressed? Try asking yourself, what conversation might I be avoiding? Instead of thinking, why shouldn't I feel this way? Try thinking, what is this feeling trying to tell me? Stress is information. It's feedback. Stress is your inner wisdom asking for attention. And the moment you recognize a communication gap, you gain power, because awareness creates a choice. A simple awareness practice that you can try this week is no action is required yet. No confrontation, no pressure, just awareness. So when you're in a situation where you notice stress going on in your life, ask yourself, where am I feeling tension? Is there a conversation connected to this? What would clarity look like here? You don't have to have this conversation yet. You just need to recognize it, because recognizing the gap is the first step towards peace. So recognizing that communication gaps are not failures, they're invitations. They're invitations to grow, invitations to be clearer, and invitations to live with less resentment and more peace. So as you go through your week, just remember that stress is rarely about the moment. It's born out of the meaning that we attach to it. It's born in assumptions, in expectations, in interpretations, and again, very often in silence. So when expectations go unmet, especially unspoken ones, resentment really takes root. So recognizing that is the first step to making progress in this area. Unmet expectations are what creates resentment. So again, ask yourself, who am I holding responsible for something that I never clearly expressed? And what expectation have I assumed instead of communicated? Avoiding things doesn't eliminate discomfort, it just delays it, because the conversation has to happen. And as we dive deeper into this series about the conversations that shape our lives, we're going to learn a little bit more about how to speak clearly, listen better, and navigate those hard conversations that do need to happen instead of being delayed. Remember, communication gaps are not failures. They're invitations to grow and to be clear and to live with less resentment and more peace. I encourage you to download the listener reflection worksheet that's linked in the show notes. It's designed to help you identify the conversations that may be quietly creating stress in your life and prepare for them with intention. In the next episode of this series, we're going to talk about how to say what you really mean without guilt or anger or fear of being misunderstood, because clarity doesn't have to be harsh and honesty doesn't have to hurt. Until next time, remember, the quality of your life is deeply connected to the quality of your conversations. Thanks for being here and for choosing to live with fuller expectations. Thanks for listening today. If this episode sparked something in you, please share it with a friend, leave a comment or a review, and reach out and let me know what resonated. Remember, no matter what age or stage of life you're in, you can pivot. And always remember, the second half of life is not a winding down. It's a waking up. Please follow or subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our podcast family. Let's keep showing up and being the best version of ourselves. Until next time, take care.